Globalization. Globalization is the spread of free market capitalism throughout the world. The World Trade Organization is the basic constitution of the global economy. From the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the act or process of globalizing, the state of being globalized, especially the development of an increasingly integrated global economy, marked especially by free trade, free flow of capital, and the tapping of cheaper foreign labor markets. From the Global Policy Forum, but for billions of the world's people, business-driven globalization means uprooting old ways of life and threatening livelihoods and cultures. Question: how are we, or you, affected by globalization? The debate. It is not between globalization and no globalization. The expansion of world trade is inevitable and has been going on for hundreds of years. The debate is how to balance free trade with the human rights of citizens. Question: how does globalization put diversity at risk in a local sense? What does globalization need to address? Workers. Most of the world's population must work for a living. In 1980, the income of the richest 10% of the world's people were 70 times that of the poorest 10%. In 1999, the incomes of the richest 10% of the world's people were 122 times that of the poorest 10%. Question: what ethical issues does the unequal distribution of wealth create? Other definitions of globalization. Social activism to create a more equitable world order. International agreements that place the needs of people, local economies, and the natural world ahead of the corporations. Revitalization of local communities by promoting maximum self-reliance. Establishing economic enterprises and institutions that enhance democratic control by emphasizing the use of local resources for local production and consumption to produce a better balance between local commerce and long-distance trade. 5. Abandoning the paradigm of unlimited economic growth blind to ecological limits. 6. Recognizing rights and sovereignty of indigenous peoples. Encouraging biodiversity, cultural diversity, and diversity of social, economic, and political forms. Developing consumption based primarily on renewable resources of energy and raw materials, and recycling all types of waste. Here is an example of how globalization has affected Starbucks and McDonald's, or how they have affected the world. If we continue to import and export our cultures, will it all look alike? English is now the most spoken language in the world. According to a report from the Zoological Society of London at George Wright Society, the steep declines in both language and nature mirror each other. 1 in 4 of the world's 7,000 languages are now threatened with extinction, and linguistic diversity is declining as fast as biodiversity, about 30% since 1970, they say. Today, about 7,000 distinct languages, not dialects, span the earth. Academics predict that 90% of these will be lost before the end of this century. Why should we care or be interested? What do we have to gain from linguistic diversity? How and why are we losing languages? Languages are lost due to shifts of more commonly spoken languages. In other words, moving from what you speak to what people speak in the big city, perhaps English. This primarily takes place due to globalization and colonization. Moreover, the degree of linguistic loss is measured by the population number that speaks the language only inside their homes, no longer amongst the newest generation, or the most endangered are those spoken only by the oldest generations. Political, economic, and/or social strife are the main drivers for nations whose languages are being replaced by more commonly spoken languages. Why should we care? More than spoken and written components of culture, language provides nations with unique perspectives, ways of understanding, and regional stability. If we travel everywhere, if we use the same products, if we all come to believe in similar ideas, will we all be the same? There are a number of negative impacts of globalization that globalization has had on cultural diversity, including the influence of multinational corporations have on promoting a consumer culture, the exploitation of workers and markets, and influencing society values. This increased availability of commercial media and products can drown out local cultural influence. Loss of individualism and group identity occur when globalization encourages a Western ideal of individualism. This promotes a homogeneous set of values and beliefs. In other words, leading back to we're almost all the same. From a paper about globalization and its effects on diversity, Some Economic Aspects by Maria Grazia La Spada, published in 2010, a close connection exists also from the economic point of view between globalization and cultural diversity. Globalization without diversity in a homogeneous world in which all nations or regions have the same economic and social structure both on the supply side and on the demand side, though with differences quantitative level, would simply be internationalization. On the other hand, in a global economy where cultural diversity is stimulated with the purpose of avoiding the phenomenon of homogenization, favoring instead the integration of different cultures, economic development would not only be culturally sustainable. The existence of diversity of cultures, tastes, and preferences could assure a variegated demand for products that would slow down the danger determined by the saturation of markets, and such diversity could also be the source of a constant process of innovation that would maintain incentives to investment. Did you know that there were over 175 varieties of potatoes? How many other items include such variety? In grocery stores in America, there is tremendous variety in products. I learned from going to Tena, a very small town in the Andes in Ecuador, that such variety is not necessary if the store has what I want and need at any given time. Given the high demand for cheap products, do you think it is possible for the U.S. to thrive without the importation and exportation of consumer goods? With the current economy, do you think it is beneficial for American companies to expand and export goods in efforts to save their business? This business, after the slump in the economy, reached out to global consumers of fire trucks. Now, about 11% of the 250 trucks that Sutphen makes per year sell overseas, not only in China, but Venezuela, Colombia, and Peru. When this article was written, they said, just last week the company signed a $3.8 million deal with the Chinese fire department. It's a major part of our growth strategy. We know that if we're going to be around for the next 100 years, we're going to have to be more global. You don't globalize the business, there's probably no chance. New Balance Shoes states, we're proud to be the only major company to make or assemble more than 4 million pairs of athletic footwear per year in the USA, which represents a limited portion of our U.S. sales. Where the domestic value is at least 70%, we label our shoes made in the USA. Outsourcing has moved many jobs out of the U.S. You may know from your reading and watching videos that in some local areas, manufacturing offers a living wage to those lucky enough to live there. Remember, a good source of transportation is necessary, so many factories are close to shipping ports. How has globalization affected you? This is a great question. I believe it is centrally connected to the internet, yet the internet is mainly in English. I know that I benefit because I can have students from other countries take my online course. I know that those who don't speak English as a first language will have a lot of difficulty with an online course. I also benefit because I can easily find anything I need to buy here in Boise, and if I go on the internet to shop, I can get items from almost anywhere in the world. I can be sure of finding someone who speaks English in most places, even in Ecuador, a mostly Spanish-speaking country, where I visited my daughter taking a year of school abroad. And they used US dollars there. I can buy goods cheaply from local stores such as Walmart. I can get strawberries in the winter, I can listen to music from anywhere, and I can access help 24 hours a day due to outsourcing technical help. What about you?